The afternoon sun beat down on Marcus Chen's salvage yard, casting long shadows across the rusted hulks of decommissioned shuttles and broken-down haulers. He was elbow-deep in the engine compartment of a civilian transport when he heard the unmistakable whine of a failing thruster system approaching from the east. Marcus wiped the grease from his hands and squinted at the sky. A small vessel, sleek, organic-looking, nothing like the boxy human designs he was used to, limped toward his garage, trailing smoke. The ship touched down hard in the clearing beside his workshop, gouging furrows in the red dirt. He grabbed his toolkit and jogged over, already cataloging the damage. The hull bore scorch marks from what looked like plasma fire, and one of the main thrusters had melted into slag. Whoever piloted this thing was lucky to be alive. The airlock hissed open, and Marcus stopped in his tracks. The woman who emerged stood nearly 7 feet tall, her scales shimmering iridescent purple in the sunlight. Horns curved back from her elongated skull, and her eyes, vertical slits of molten gold, fixed on him with predatory intensity. Her species, the Drakari, were known throughout the galaxy as warriors, traders, and occasionally pirates. "Human," she said, her voice a low rumble. "My ship requires repairs. Can you assist?" Marcus had heard the stories. The Drakari were proud, sometimes dangerously so. They valued strength and honor above all else. But he'd also heard they paid well. "Let me take a look," he said, approaching the vessel. The damage was worse than he'd initially thought. The thruster wasn't just damaged, it was completely destroyed. The navigation array had taken a hit too, and several hull plates needed replacement. Parts for a Drakari ship would cost a fortune, if he could even find them on this backwater colony world. "Well?" the woman asked, arms crossed. Marcus did some quick mental math. 3 weeks, maybe 4, and the parts alone will run you about 15,000 credits. Labor's extra. Her jaw tightened. "I have 6,000 credits. That is all?" Something in her voice, not quite desperation but close, made Marcus pause. He looked at her more carefully. Her flight suit was worn, patched in several places. The ship, for all its elegant design, was old. This wasn't some rich trader fallen on hard times. This was someone barely scraping by. "Where were you headed?" he asked. "That is not your concern. Humor me." She was silent for a long moment. Then, "The Korvax system. My clutch sister is ill. She needs medicine that can only be found there." Marcus knew the Korvax system. It was 3 weeks away at best, longer with a damaged ship. Every day counted. He thought about his own sister, dead 5 years now from a disease they couldn't afford to treat. He thought about the credit chip in his pocket that held everything he'd saved for the past 6 months, barely enough to keep his garage running. "I'll do it for 6,000, he said. "But I'll need 2 weeks, her eyes widened. "That is insufficient payment for such work. Call it professional courtesy." For the first time, her expression softened. "You would do this? For a stranger?" "For someone trying to save family," Marcus said. "Yeah, I would." 12 days later, Marcus watched the Drakari woman. She'd finally told him her name was Kyrith, pilot her restored ship into the sky. She'd tried to give him a weapon, an heirloom blade, as additional payment. He'd refused. The look in her golden eyes as she'd lifted off stayed with him for days. A week passed. Marcus returned to his routine of fixing busted freighters and keeping his struggling garage afloat. He'd dipped into his savings to cover the parts for Kyrith's ship, and now he was scrambling to make rent. On the 8th day, the sky darkened. Marcus looked up from the nav computer he was repairing to see something that made his heart stop. A Drakari battlecruiser, easily 200 meters long, bristling with weapon arrays, descended toward his garage. These ships were commanded by clan leaders, the Drakari elite. His neighbors scattered. The local sheriff's vehicle sped away. Marcus stood alone in his yard as the massive vessel touched down, crushing a rusted hauler beneath its landing struts. The boarding ramp lowered with hydraulic precision. Kyrith descended first, now wearing elaborate armor decorated with clan markings. Behind her came 24 Drakari warriors, and at their center an enormous male whose scales gleamed like polished obsidian. "This is the human?" the male asked, his voice like grinding stone. "Yes, Clan Lord Varesh," Kyrith said. "This is Marcus Chen, who repaired my vessel and asked nothing in return." Varesh approached Marcus, each step making the ground tremble. Marcus forced himself to stand still, even as every survival instinct screamed at him to run. "My daughter tells me you could have charged 5 times what you asked." Varesh said. That you used your own savings to ensure she could reach her sister in time. Daughter, clan lord. Marcus's mouth went dry. I also understand, Varesh continued, that you refused additional payment even when offered a weapon worth more than your entire garage. I just did what felt right, Marcus managed. Varesh studied him for a long moment. Then impossibly the massive Drakari smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Drakari do not forget debts of honor, Marcus Chen. My youngest daughter recovered because Kyrith arrived in time. For this you have earned our clan's gratitude. He gestured and warriors began unloading crates from the cruiser. We have brought payment, Varesh said. Rare metals, technology, and enough credits to expand your garage tenfold. But more than that, he placed a clawed hand on Marcus's shoulder. You have earned the friendship of Clan Varesh. Any human who shows such honor has a place among us. Marcus stared at the crates, at the Drakari warriors working efficiently to unload them, at Kirith, who nodded at him with something like respect. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Say you will accept, Varesh rumbled. And know that from this day forward, this world and all who live here are under Clan Varesh's protection. Any who threaten you threaten us. Later, after the cruiser had departed and Marcus sat alone among crates worth more than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, he thought about that moment of choice. He could have turned Kyrith away, could have charged her everything, could have kept himself safe. Instead, he'd done what felt right. Sometimes he realized that was enough.